it really requires a lot of consciousness in order to track your health.
Julia Prakapovich, founder and managing partner of Interface Fund.
I don't really believe that introducing more devices that trace your health would actually improve consumer behavior. If you look at all consumer companies, they're really good with understanding underlying desires of people rather than providing them with a straightforward solution. So I think like the future, if you want to create a great consumer company that will operate in the healthcare space, that should be like a consumer-oriented company, like where consumer interests, like underlying interests, are at the first place, solving their problem. So it's not going to be as straightforward as like we are producing a better healthcare outcome for you guys.
All right, Julia, hello, welcome. I still remember the first time that we met. It was a couple years ago at our mutual friend's birthday party. Very chic place. And we just kind of bumped into each other, started chatting. You asked me what I do for work. And at that time, I was still working in medical devices. I was the technical sales manager globally for a medical device manufacturer. I asked what you do. You worked in venture capital. We started talking about all the different devices that we love and totally geeked out and just almost like, frequently talking about different devices, different technologies, ranging from deep tech all the way up to neurotech. And here we are today to chat more about what excites us. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, I would love if you could share for all of our listeners what your passions are and what you focus on with your venture capital fund.
Sure. I'm a huge science geek, so I find myself super happy working in venture capital where I can actually take science to the actual world. I run a Interface Fund, so I'm the founder and managing partner of Interface Fund, where we invest in early stage deep tech companies. So we definitely invest into hardware, we invest into biotech, probably like more traditionally deep tech type of application. We go all the way to kind of traditional industries. So a lot of biotech go into medical field, like pharma, therapeutics, and a lot of hardware go all the way from like industry to defense. But one of the field that we're actually very excited about is the future of healthcare. And we just see the interesting trends both in academia and the consumer world where suddenly wearable become a possibility of having the healthcare decentralized, say.
Yeah, so you're not as dependent on a primary care provider or a hospital, for example, to be able to cure a disease or illness, or?
Yeah, well, I think like healthcare system in general is pretty inefficient. If you look at this from the perspective of efficacy of providers right now and how the whole system incentivizes and structured, we have pretty much most of our healthcare is acute treatment. So people address their health only when they actually have to address their health. Although, like, if you look at other areas of our life, we have most of things in our life are traced and tracked. I mean, like, we have cars that have a tremendous amount of sensors that are tracing everything everything that can happen with a car. Like, for instance, we do have like home insurance that definitely also have different sensors, so can prevent major financial consequences. But healthcare is probably one part where we unfortunately still address this only when the problem is occurring.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Do you think that with the wearables that exist today, a lot of people can take control of their health and start measuring certain things?
Well, I don't think the wearables that we have right now are actually good enough to trace our health, like to have a preventive healthcare. But I definitely see the trend that's happening right now in terms of the hardware, new hardware breakthrough, and like the potential outcome of having a better healthcare in the consumer space for sure. So there definitely were a lot of companies created in a pure software play. either telehealth or some vertical integrated providers, horizontally integrated providers like marketplace platforms, different payment systems that also improve the healthcare system overall. But we still yet to see the best examples of the hardware companies.
Interesting. Just for our listeners, could you explain a little bit about what you meant by vertical and horizontal?
Sure. So horizontal, the best example would be something like an Amazon. So you have this marketplace platform where you can go and choose any best provider, best care provider, best insurance provider, and the vertically integrated systems is where you specifically receive the care.
Okay, amazing. Thank you. And then I also wanted to touch on the hardware piece because that's so interesting. I feel like every other week I see a new hardware technology come out. There's been there's the original gangsters, the OGs. There's Apple Watch, there's Garmin, now there's 8 Sleep, there are things, there's so many. And I consistently see, additionally, many technologies being made specifically for use for clinical trials. So do you think it's more important to have better sensors and a more holistic calculation, or not calculation, but a more holistic view of someone's life in order for it to be effective? Or is it software?
I think that's a both combination of software and hardware. So I spent some time at MIT at Alex Pentland Lab, and we've been doing a lot of research on how social behavior can be, how we can find patterns in mobile data in order to predict social behavior. And the interesting learning from there was you can pretty much predict a lot of things based on just pure phone data, based on your location, based on your app usages. Anything from pretty much from the financial health to the mental health. So that lab, some media lab launched a company called Endure, and they recently merged with Headspace, and they're like $3 billion company right now. But they are, the outcome of this was what you can have a lot of feedback from the data, solo data, but you can also improve that because look, you go to the hospital to see the doctor because there are certain things they need to see, they need to know, they need to analyze. We don't really have the understanding of our biomarkers, for instance, based on the software. We cannot predict our biomarkers purely based on a software. We cannot predict our heart rate purely based on a software. We cannot predict EEG or ECG data. So for that, we need to have some sort of sensors that would provide you with this kind of data. And again, if you go to hospital, the first thing you do is you measure all of this vital data, vital records, in order to create better understanding of what's happening with the person. So I think combination of the software and the hardware would be the best outcome. Definitely pure hardware would not solve this. If you just have a pure, let's say, if you look at an Apple Watch and you look at a pure just fitness tracker, Apple Watch will always win over any other standalone device just because Apple Watch would also gather much more data from your every single interaction. And again, I mentioned it with MIT example, having finding patterns in between every single part of your life together with a hardware wearable devices makes much better results than just a pure standalone data analytic company or a pure standalone wearable.
That's very interesting. That's also kind of why we started Fulcra, because we realized that in silos, if you only have your data from your Apple Watch or let's say Garmin or Whoop, they all focus on collecting certain things, but there might be something in your finances that points to something. Maybe when you're stressed out and your resting heart rate is low, then you tend to order more cookies, whatever it might be. So it is a very interesting space. And it's really exciting to see how, I was going to say with the advent of AI, but that's actually not true because AI has been around, but with the proliferation of GPTs, how a lot of technology is more rapidly increasing and transforming. Do you feel like you have seen in the companies that you work with a more quick iteration time because of the proliferation of technologies like the GPTs?
I think not specifically ChatGPT, but in general, yes. I think GPT was a really good example of how we can use foundation models to create a real breakthrough. I don't think anyone expected this to happen at an extent it happened. But I agree, like foundation model been existing for a while. We definitely yet to see the best examples of the best impact we can create with the foundation models. But but in general, I think technological development is interconnected. So every single part of the stack, like whatever we innovate, like wherever we innovate, will accelerate the innovation in other spaces as well. And a good example will be hardware become much more accessible and the hardware development become much more accessible because of the software development as well. Software become very commoditized. So by combining a lot of these pieces, we can actually create a better innovation not elsewhere. I see this a lot in academia where we suddenly have a much more scientific breakthrough. We have more accessibility. I see this in the manufacturing as well. A lot of our portfolio companies that are operating in more traditional space, like aerospace, for instance, they leverage a lot of these pieces of innovation and they are able to innovate themselves much quicker. So I think in tech, we see a lot of the singularity by the combination of different technological advances together.
Oh, that's so amazing. That is very cool. Do you have a specific type of wearable or technology that you are just passionate about and everyone should look into?
Yeah, I would say I'm in general super passionate about taking healthcare into consumer, like to create it more decentralized. And I actually believe we already have a lot of these great examples like Apple Watch that are tracing a lot of your ECG and blood oxygen data. I think we can do much better. And specifically, Apple is working a lot on this kind of technologies as well. So by tracing this together with neural data and your vitals, that's going to create a completely different picture. I'm really excited about the potential of neurotech, like wearable neurotech. I think we're still a little bit behind in terms of like understanding how we can do this for wearables. There are definitely much more excitement about implantables, and definitely makes a lot of sense because of like our biological structure, it's a little bit harder to operate in the wearable space. So we yet to see the great company that will leverage either like implantable data and create a better wearable, or will completely reinvent how we approach neurotech wearable. But I'm extremely excited about that part, and because we can actually do a lot of things with neurotech itself, like everything from sleep to concentration, cognitive ability, and focus. A lot of cases like neurodivergence will be will be much better. Uh, I'm extremely excited about transcutaneous type of blood monitoring, and that's something that is a little bit forward-looking type of technology because we still didn't figure out how to make this happen. But once we are like using like for instance optical type of solutions, we can kind of we can measure a lot of wideband signals.
Amazing. For someone who doesn't know what transcutaneal technology is, might you explain it so that?
So transcutaneous is a non-invasive type of blood test. So let's say you go to the doctor and you have like blood test measured, more like Theranos example, but you can do
I was
this.
just about to say, yeah.
But you can do this completely non-invasively through the optical sensors.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Very, very neat. I've actually met her, by the way.
It's a very interesting concept. I think we're very close to have this medical grade glucose monitoring systems.
Yes.
But I'm at several labs who are working on this for like wider range, and they also combine this together with other data, and like find a correlation. So improving the noise from the pure transcutaneous data. And Apple is also working on this. So two really interesting directions where Apple is now working in healthcare wearables are, e.g., AirPods.
That is,
AirPods.
wow.
AirPods with EEG integrated.
It's like getting a little electric shock through your head. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, they're probably going to go after recording first. So they're not going to be closed loop. They're going to probably just record and collect data about your brain signals. I'm not really a big fan of EEG. I think that we can do much better. But in general, that's probably going to be interesting, taking into consideration Apple also has much bigger data sets, so they can go after figure out much more about the health from that. Transcutaneous type of blood monitoring Apple is also something we're working on. So they can potentially integrate this in your Apple Watch and have very comprehensive picture about your health.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see if if a medical professional is going to get a lot of different data or have different outcomes based on having a broader set of data, like from your EEG or your heart rate. Because right now you only get it tested if you go in for your annual physical or if you're sick, right? So it'll be nice. And I feel like having that data or having a platform that can share it, which we're going to be able to do soon as well, where you can share with your doctor kind of your statistics or your vitals over the last, or even your mood over the last month or last week. It'll be really neat. And I'm hoping it'll transform healthcare for all of us and lead to healthier outcomes.
It should. I still think it's a little bit harder to have this type of companies organically. Um, it's create it. We need to have like completely different skill sets to create a consumer healthcare company, and it's much easier in a software space. It's much harder in a hardware space to actually have the skill set of the scientific breakthrough, like an actual hardware breakthrough, but also the consumer skill set of being able to create a great design-led companies like Apple. Um, but I actually believe if we can crack this vertical and horizontal integrated consumer company that will base on wearable software and be like decentralized consumer company, that's going to be trillion dollar opportunity.
That would be amazing. Yeah, because a lot of the challenge that I saw working in the industry as well was if you are an engineer, you're trained in medical devices, that kind of sensor and application applied to the human body, there's a lot more variables to it than if you're just strictly hardware in a non-medical space. Then the FDA regulations might affect how quickly you can bring something to market, right? I'm sure you've seen that as well. So it's difficult if you're building something with the hope or intention of helping a specific disease area, and it takes so many years, and by that time someone else has built it, or the industry completely changes. So
For sure. Yeah.
but I guess, are there wearable technologies that you've seen that are very helpful for like helping mental health outcomes?
No wearables, unfortunately, but there are definitely several companies trying to work on this from the wearable perspective. I haven't seen anyone who being extremely efficient, but we invested in a company that is doing implantables for mental health. Okay, great. I would definitely recommend looking at Ginger, which is doing the software play. So they are analyzing all of your mobile data and finding patterns in between your mental health, especially they're working with the severe mental health problems like schizophrenia or bipolar disorders. And by combining this together with providing data to your doctor, by linking you to like your data to your doctor, they can actually identify several downturns, like drawbacks in your mental health journey. And I think that's pretty important because a lot of patients that are going through mental health problems, they are not capable to identify they're going through worsening states. But having like something like Ginger is definitely helping to notify your doctor that you need an extra care. Unfortunately, there is nothing like this. There, like Ginger works with depression as well, so they work with several cases of mental health. Unfortunately, there is no wearables in the space. It could be much better if we can also record brain signal. It could be even better. We can stimulate brain in cases like this, so you don't really have to go back to the doctor, but you can gently navigate the mental health problem yourself without chemicals. Because like technically, it makes much more sense to engage with your neural systems through our electric signals, that's through the chemicals, just because we are a biological electric system. Like our neural system is a biological electric system. Our brain is a has great compute capacity, but it's like its electrical system as well. So once we can navigate the space throughout the electric signals, it definitely makes it technically should be much more efficient to operate this throughout the electric, engage with throughout the electric signals.
Yeah, and if you think about, sorry, go ahead.
So yeah, the company we invested is doing implantable, and they're doing mental health implantable.
Very cool.
Or drug-resistant depression. At this moment, they're working on a drug-resistant depression. So Matsiv, they are definitely working on both recording and stimulation.
Oh, cool.
To have a closed loop system where they can understand whatever is happening with your brain at this specific moment and help you to stabilize those acute depression states.
Oh, that is very fascinating. So it'll be able to give you kind of an instant feedback loop as opposed to waiting.
Yes,
and that's
right.
predictive as well. Okay, that's amazing. Yeah, and if you think about it too, a lot of electricity is just the movement of different pieces of atoms and chemicals. So atoms is the wrong word, but like electrons, right? So yeah, even that ends up being chemical. So electricity just helps with everything. It's great. But I guess kind of still in that same vein of electronics and wearables, what do you think is the most underrated sleep wearable?
Oh, that's a really good question. Again, I don't really think that we have a wearable yet. I definitely excited about. Well, there is a great efficacy in audio therapy for sleep. Uh, I I don't think we have any devices right now that work. I definitely know some startups are working on this. I don't think there are any on the market right now that you can try in terms of like navigate your sleep throughout audio. Like in academia, there are a lot of data proving that it works. So definitely something to look for. It may be even more efficient than neural stimulation for sleep. I think like one of the most popular right now is 8 Sleep, which is no wearable, but it's like a mattress that just help you to put your body in specific state. I think that's like probably one of the most exciting sleep tech right now as the tech company. I don't think there is anything in a wearable space, although they could be potentially they can control your sleep. They can
Oh,
with a different.
oh, interesting. Okay, I was just thinking of a wearable like Aura Ring because that's what I usually wear. But controlling your sleep and the same thing like you were saying, that feedback loop in order to help you sleep better. Wow, that will be very interesting.
Definitely, there are several like research groups working on sleep, so we may come to like something like this. Unfortunately, there's a lot of science lost in translation to the market.
Oh, what do you mean? But well, I understand what you mean, but how does that happen specifically?
Well, if you look at the science that is translated into medical field or into industry, it definitely much easier just because there is a skill set needed to transition from. Well, it's still hard, but it's much easier done um, to bring scientific breakthrough into the consumer market. Consumer market are operating on a very different and a very different terms. And consumer markets are rather more to be careful here, not to not to say that. So consumer markets are very different. If you look at whole consumer space, like companies like Apple are like really good design-led companies. It's not really happening in a medical space. Like we don't really need to have a good design company in a medical space. We just need a great science that is efficient. In a consumer space, we care less about efficacy of the product. We care more about design-led. So consumer space operate in very different terms. It's more like art and science. So having like seeing these companies organically is very rare. And well, I definitely would love to see more companies like Apple that could be great in the hardware space, but also be great design like companies.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, That is a bummer because I remember working with a lot of companies that would spin out of large institutions around America, and a lot of them do get stunted because it's difficult for many people to adopt that technology unless it's done well, like you said. So that is a bummer, but okay, kind of switching topics a little bit. What is the one mistake that you think people make when they are doing their current health tracking?
Yeah, so a lot of people who are using who are tracing their health right now, they're very self-conscious. They're self-conscious, they're very disciplined, and it's the whole reason why they're tracing their health, just because they are very conscious about the impact it has on their life and whatever prevention they want to make to their lifestyle in order to improve their health. I don't think it's a very scalable type of mindset, just because it requires a lot of mental effort to actually trace your health and to make prevention. It requires a lot of discipline that unfortunately we humans as species are lacking. So I think the main concern is how we can make these kind of preventive solutions scalable enough, consumer-centric enough, and so that we can exist like in decentralized world. I I think like Apple is a really good example again, just because you can have this very natural interaction with the consumer, you can have the very high loyalty to the brand, therefore you can introduce much more. So um, I think, yeah, I think we just, yeah, I think the problem lies in how we can scale those. I think people who are tracing their health right now, they're doing a really great job. So there are like probably 1% of those very conscious customers who would acquire a lot of different tech that you bring to them. It's not the case for the scalability though.
That's true. Yeah, I feel like for scalability, probably something that's more automatic and detects more easily for you is going to be important instead of requiring manual input. Now I'm trying to think because I have so many questions for you. I'm like, what do I want to ask next? I was going to ask you, do you think that the average consumer is going to become more educated because of as a result of all the technologies proliferating?
No, I don't think so. So
No,
unfortunately, I don't.
we're doomed. I'm just kidding.
I don't think so. Just purely because human went through the centuries of evolution, and unfortunately, we still have the same. So our biology is not changing much since the beginning, since 150,000 years. We still have the same biases. We still have same same desires, same biases and same reactions. We are not very forward-looking species. We are not like we have a lot of this immediate gratification type of things. So it really requires a lot of consciousness in order to track your health. So I don't really believe that introducing more devices that trace your health would actually improve consumer behavior. I think again, like if you look at all consumer companies, they're really good with understanding underlying desires of people rather than providing them with a straightforward solution. So I think like the future, if you want to create a great consumer company that will operate in a healthcare space, that should be like a company, like pure design, like consumer oriented company, like pure design like company, where consumer interests, like underlying interests, are at the first place with solving their problem behind the scene. So it's not going to be as straightforward as like we are producing a better healthcare outcome for you guys. So I don't really believe that.
That makes sense. That makes sense. That's a bummer. Well, hopefully people listening, if they aren't tracking their health, they'll start and be a part of the change of our species. But I was also going to ask, kind of staying in that space of futurism, where do you see AI affecting healthcare? Because I've read some papers and heard some talks about how it'll affect doctors, because we've been talking about wearables, but not.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think Vinod Khosla did a prediction back in 2013 where he said about how AI may substitute a lot of healthcare healthcare processes, like optimize a lot of healthcare processes, starting from diagnostics to all the way to like very tiny like this inefficiencies in the healthcare systems that we have. But there are definitely a lot of things that we can improve. I think really interesting example. I think a really interesting point will be he was advising the Harvard Medical School, and he emphasized that for the future, when Harvard Medical School is hiring students, like is accepting students, Harvard Medical School needs to put much more emphasis on empathy rather than IQ itself. Because what we have right now with AI and what we have right now with all the information accessibility, it becomes much easier to get to accumulate a massive amount of information. So would we really need healthcare? Would we really need doctors to be so knowledgeable about so many things? They are not capable to read 5,000 pages of newly updated research all the time. So, with like innovation goes, and like academia provides a lot of like new data. Doctors are not capable to absorb this massive amount of information, and like in again, like look at a whole like inefficiency in a medical education as well. You go through like many years of training. You're trying to memorize a lot of complexity. My mom is a doctor. I know this. She goes like every year through trainings in order to update her knowledge. Do we really need that? Like, or can we use like from more like integrated system where doctors are working on par with this massive data set that is comprehensive, fully updated, and also can summarize a lot of concepts for you like straightforwardly. I think if like from the efficiency perspective, it makes much more sense to work with AI at this point. What we really cannot substitute is empathy. And I think that's where doctors will still play a major role, because you still want to hear diagnostic, you still want to hear a doctor talking to you, not a computer, not a robotics.
Yeah, because doctors, humans have that heart where you just feel so cared for when you have a really good doctor. They just make you feel so like loved and seen.
Yeah, it gets back to biology. Like we are a species that are social. We need empathy. We need we need humans.
Yeah, it is cool. I was reading about an example where an AI actually, there was somebody who had just gotten back from Burning Man, but the location that they lived in was much further away from Nevada or from the desert. So that doctor didn't have that domain and geography specific knowledge to be able to diagnose this patient, and would have diagnosed him incorrectly had he not he was testing out one of the AI assistants or co-pilots for medicine. And he just put in like, okay, this patient was in Black Rock City, all these things. And he had some like rare lung infection that only can happen there. So I think that'll help so much, like you said, in the efficiency. And I think it'll help with physician burnout, because I have a lot of family that is doctors as well, and they work so hard, and a lot of my friends are. And I'm just like, I hope, and they're really doing a lot for people. And I just hope that the burnout piece gets solved.
For sure. I think that's one of the hardest professions that's one of the harder professions we have. Being doctor is required to have such an extensive knowledge about every single part of the human biology and every single research that is newly created. It's massive. Like I definitely think we can do it better. We can do much better in terms of the like helping doctors to be more efficient, but we can also reduce the pressure. Like look, with the wearable devices, like coming back to wearable devices, we can also improve the efficacy of the interaction with a doctor if you were to come with existing data sets that prove that can help to understand your symptoms much better, and it can have like a whole history of like what happened to you much better as well. Because again, like if you see doctors right now in the US, I think you have just 15 minutes interaction with a doctor.
Yeah, after waiting for like 2 hours, unfortunately.
Yeah, whatever metrics they're going to measure within that period of time. And it's not really enough to make a comprehensive comprehensive check within that period of time. So definitely helpful to have more data.
You know what I'm really excited about? Robotic surgery. And I am so excited for the ability for surgeons in different countries to be able to operate in another country because of time differences. I don't remember if it was Mexico or China, but there was a doctor that was abroad that did a surgery for a patient in another country virtually. And I think that is just fascinating.
That's very exciting. I'm very excited about all sorts of like implantable robotics. So we can also leverage, I don't know, anything from like making the plant drug release for critically ill patients all the way to like the very precise delivery. And they extend, there are so many possibilities that we can have with nanorobotics.
It's so cool. I used to work on that. When I was studying engineering, we made nanoparticles for insulin delivery. It was pretty cool. And it's a great field. I used to work with robotics companies too. And every time I see robotic surgery, I'm just so fascinated. But yeah, it's great. And okay, so we are coming to the close, but I wanted to give people the opportunity to connect with you. Where should they follow you? What social media to give you a little shout out and say hi?
Well, I think Twitter will be the easiest, but I also have my email on the website. So
Beautiful. Excited. And thank you so much for being here. It was great to chat about what we love.
thank you so much for having me.
Yay. I'm so glad.